So do you mind sharing just a little bit on the topic of the wages and the slave labour concept for us, because that is a huge topic, as you said.
Yeah. This is something that comes up in the news constantly. You know, hearing stories about, particularly in manufacturing, and that's really what's created this fear in all of us, that there's sweatshop conditions going on for these sorts of workers, and that it's basically unethical to hire people on low wages. The best way I can describe why that is not always the case, and certainly those things happen, but it doesn't mean you have to do it as an employer. The best way to get your head around it is to understand that wages, the actual number doesn't matter. What matters is the lifestyle that the wages buy. So if $10 in Australia buys the equivalent lifestyle of $1 in the Philippines, then logically wages would be 1/10 the price for approximately the same lifestyle, if that makes sense. So it's just getting people out of the mindset that the absolute dollar value is the critical thing, and what you really need to understand is what the lifestyle of your staff is like. And I mean, if I look at some of my staff in the IT business, in most cases they probably have a smaller telly than the average Australian television size, but they have things like full-time nannies, they have live-in chefs and cleaners. You know, most of them, that's one of the first things they do because they love their family lifestyle. They don't do any of their own housework, for example. As soon as they're on this kind of good wage as an IT engineer, and by good wage I mean something that's probably about a quarter to a fifth of the price in Australia, they can afford all those sorts of luxuries to enhance their lifestyle. So when you think about wages, don't think about the absolute dollar value of it. Think about what lifestyle it actually brings. That's where you need to talk to people who are getting paid this sort of money and really understand it. So
the people that we outsource to are then outsourcing to their own people, which has a huge flow-on effect for them.
It does. It's actually really quite rewarding being part of this industry in some of these global labour hubs, because you're part of growing a middle class that didn't exist. You know, that every dollar that you spend there flows on to help those communities in such a dramatic way compared to how a dollar actually impacts a community in Australia. So it's got that other aspect as well.
Scott, we've just had a couple of last-minute questions come in, and we've only got 7 minutes left, so we're going to race through these questions. There's a question that's come through. It says, how can I find contractors offshore and be confident that my data and information is secure? Is that a common objection, and do you have an answer?
Yeah, there's two answers. One, if you're talking about it in a project sense, so you're getting somebody to develop a database for you or something like that, you're really going to have to research the bona fides of the individual provider, get references, and do all those sorts of checks. But if you're talking about what most people do, most SMEs are now doing, and that's setting up full-time staff, then it's actually quite a lot easier. So you need to choose a reputable office provider for your staff, so you've got good quality office space. Within that, you can choose any sort of level of security you want. So if you want swipe card access, so that nobody can get into your room and no one else can see the screens of your staff, that's fine. And how you implement your IT back or throughout your organisation also impacts security. So if you're utilising a system, and you should, and we highly recommend that you don't store data offshore. There's also some legislation in some industries that prevents you from doing that. So you should be storing all of your data in Australia, and basically your offshore staff access it in a secure way. So there's a whole way to do that, which isn't particularly complicated for an IT organisation, but it's again something that we discuss in the seminars.
Okay, excellent. Now just 2 more quick questions. How do I get the book? So Scott has generously offered to post out the book to everyone viewing live today. So I've got all your email addresses, so I will send out the details for you to get access to that. So thank you so much for that, Scott.
Welcome.
And
please read it and pass it on to someone else as well.
Have you read the book? Have you read the book, Shane?
I'm still waiting for my copy to arrive.
Oh, Scott, we're going to have to organise that, buddy.
I'll get right onto that.
Excellent. And last question from a gentleman called Robert Hills is are there business tours that you run in the Philippines? And we spoke about this last week, Scott. So do you have an answer for that?
Yeah, there's a couple of options there. One is a fellow that we all probably, well, several of us know, that Shane knows, that actually does these tours in Manila and a couple of other cities in the Philippines right now, and that's really a very experiential look at the way business is done there and the way various Australian companies offshore. That is available now, and I can certainly pass on the details of the fellow who does that. He's pretty well booked out for a little while. I'll also be doing some tours coming up, and what I'd actually really like to do is combine the seminar with the tour. So, for example, we spend 2 or 3 hours talking about several topics, perhaps about recruitment methodologies and how to find the right skill sets and screen your staff and make sure you've got great staff, and then we'll go out and visit some facilities and see how they do it and talk to their recruitment people and do all that sort of stuff. So a combination of theory plus practical. So if anyone's interested in that, let me know. I can put those together pretty quickly.
So Scott, on the topic of your seminars, would you mind just telling us quickly just a little bit more about that, and I will send out some more details?
Yep. So the seminar is a relatively new adaptation of the consulting content that I created. So late last year I launched Easy Offshore as a consulting firm, and we've been primarily working with larger SMEs and corporates because they're the kind of clients that are used to paying for consulting. And basically it steps them through the entire process and pretty much eliminates all of the unknown aspects of offshoring, outsourcing, setting up a team, what skills you get, recruitment, managing those teams, all that sort of stuff. But what I found was that I couldn't get to enough people that way, and particularly smaller businesses aren't used to paying for consultants to come in and do one-on-one strategies with them and all that sort of stuff. So I've converted the content into seminar format, and that's now a one-day seminar, and I've sent you the link to that. So there's a couple coming up in Brisbane and the Gold Coast over the next 6 weeks, and basically that's a complete how-to guide. So it's a full day. It's about 8 till 3. So there's a lot of information packed into it, but you go into that seminar knowing nothing about it, and you come out with a complete guide of every single stage, everything you need to know, all the mistakes that other people make and how to avoid them, and every provider that we have tested that we know is good. So that's been a big part of it. You asked that question before about how do I know who's good and who isn't. We've compiled a list of providers that we've tested and we know are good, and that list continues to grow as we get time to expand that list. So we give you all of that information, so you can go and go and approach those providers. You'll know which ones suit you because we've already trained you on that, and then choose which ones you're going to use and how to move forward.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Scott. We really learnt a lot, and I know I took a lot of notes, and I'm looking forward to your seminar. So we'll send out those details. I'm just going to throw to Shane. I know he's got some fast 10 questions for Scott. And but firstly, Shane, just quickly, the relationship between Otrain and your training system and outsourcing, how do you see that linking together for a workforce, which I know is a big question, and we might shoot another video for that, but just quickly, how do you see that linking together?
At the risk of turning this into a plug for Otrain, which of course it is, any workforce, whether they're here or offshore, need to be trained. Online on-demand training is best. Emma, we're going to skip the 10 questions for Scott today because we promise this will start at 1 and finish at 1:30. So we're pretty much out of time, but we'll record those questions offline and make them available. Quick plug for our next seminar, which will be with Shona Mackin from Social Face, talking about Facebook and how to integrate it into your workforce. That's about all we've got time for. So thanks again for coming in, Scott. Thanks everyone for dialing in today. Thanks, Emma, for hosting, and we should sign off.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Pleasure. Thanks, Scott. We'll send out all those details and see you again in 2 weeks' time with Shona Mackin from Social Face regarding managing Facebook. Thanks, everyone. See you in 2 weeks.